interesting question. Should most people learn how to code? I mean,
Best podcast. Tap in. That's it. Subscribe.
This is the STU Street Podcast, episode 5. I am your host, Sam Morra, and today I am sitting down with Alex Dunne. Alex is a full-stack software engineer working at Provide Technologies, a Web3 startup located on the East Coast. As a 20-year-old, Alex has taken on an unconventional path to start his career journey. After attending high school in Raleigh, North Carolina, Alex realized that computer science does not firmly require a college degree and decided to enter a comp sci bootcamp. This led him to landing a job only a few months later. Alex now works on the Provide Technologies implementation of the baseline protocol, which is a data synchronization product that solves the data discrepancies within enterprise systems of record. Now, as a listener, that may sound like a lot of technical buzzwords, and like me, a lot of clarification may be needed. That is why I'm happy to welcome the man that can break it down for all of us. Please welcome someone that I'm thankful to call a friend, Alex Dunne. Alex, I'd like to start off just kind of breaking down the issue Provide Technology is trying to solve. I alluded to the data discrepancy problem that many firms are experiencing today, but could you detail for us what this truly is and maybe explain why this issue is so alarming?
yeah, for sure. So here's an example to start it off. So let's say that you have eggs at a grocery store, and as a consumer, we want to go buy eggs. This involves a lot of problems and a lot of different parts to the process of getting the eggs from the manufacturer to the grocery store, to the retailer, right? So just as this simple example, let's say that there's 3 parts in the process. There's, the manufacturer where all the chickens are and they lay all the eggs. And then there's the transportation company that moves the eggs from the manufacturer to the grocery store. And then there's the grocery store part where customers will come and buy the eggs, and then money needs to go back from the grocery store to the manufacturer, or possibly to the transportation as well, depending on how it's set up. So this is a lot of moving parts, and in the current way that these sorts of processes are implemented, there's a lot of sources of failure. So oftentimes, essentially, this requires the systems of each organization. So there's 3 organizations in this example. There's the manufacturer, the transportation, and the retailer. All of these different organizations have their own system, right? And so in this process, which we call a workflow, the systems of each discrepant organization need to stay updated. This is bad, and it breaks down a lot. This was made pretty apparent in the global supply chain breakdown that happened when COVID hit. And so essentially, we solve this problem by introducing a completely new standard to the way that this problem is solved, by applying blockchain technology to the integrating of these different systems within multi-organizational workflows, okay? So by using blockchain, we essentially put each step of the process on whichever blockchain we are utilizing. In this case, it's Ethereum most of the time. So, for example, in the workflow that I described earlier, from moving eggs to a grocery store, this would look like, in our technology, this would look like when the eggs are hatched and then they're put into all their, crates or whatever, and then they're ready for transportation. That would go onto the blockchain, and then our technology will automatically update the transportation, or essentially will automatically update any systems that should know about this event, okay, automatically, because we are using the blockchain as a common record of truth, a common source of truth. So by using this as a trigger, everything happens totally reliably, because of course blockchains are built to be reliable and secure, and without failure, with 100% consistency, okay? So essentially what this means for customers is simply way increased reliability and efficiency in these sorts of workflows. So, like, for example, I talk about eggs at a grocery store because I like to eat a lot of eggs, right?
Yeah.
But like I go to Harris Teeter, and they don't have my 30-pack eggs all the time anymore. That's because of failures of these sorts of systems, okay? And so by applying our technology, then all of this stuff is kept way more tightly integrated. We like to use the term synchronize everything, because this is a new paradigm to approaching this sort of problem, and essentially just leads to lower costs across the entire workflow between all of the participants, and just a very smooth sort of end-to-end solution to this sort of stuff.
You gave a good example about how this works on the customer end of things.
Mhm.
The economics for a corporation, right? How is this implemented where it's saving them money? And can you just dig a little bit deeper on that and how much money is really at play there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would just say it's simply it's saving money because no longer are there discrepancies between different systems in the process or workflow. So when there are these discrepancies, it takes time, and of course, time costs money. Okay, so that's essentially where the core savings come from. There can also be, legal issues between if you have one system saying
Yeah.
one thing and then another system saying another thing. And then in the scale of enterprise businesses, such as Coca-Cola, a company of the such, this can result in millions and millions and millions, if not billions of dollars of billions of dollars being put into resolving these problems. And so by implementing our technology, that money is immediately saved.
The data uniformity and the limiting of discrepancies is what
Yes.
bare bones blockchain's meant to do. And this might be a novel concept to many, but a concept you believe is going to be ubiquitous moving forward. What is the argument behind this, and what are the applications inside and outside of the crypto field?
Yeah, so I mean, crypto at its core is, it started with Bitcoin, which is a way to exchange value without an intermediary, without gold or Visa or governments or US dollar. And so the applications behind this are enormous. So, number one, I mean, you can send money anywhere in the world instantly, generally with consistent fees, and absolute certainty that it's gotten to the place that you sent it almost immediately. There are different variables in this, but that's essentially what it comes down to. And then after Bitcoin, when Ethereum was released, that essentially started the whole paradigm of why blockchain is so interesting, at least to me and many others in the crypto space. The applications are essentially unlimited. I mean, some of the things that interest me the most are, there's like the centralized exchanges where you can exchange cryptocurrencies for different cryptocurrencies in of course, a non-intermediary way. So like you don't have to go to a bank and say, I want some euros, and then you give them dollars and they give you euros and then take like a fee.
It's eliminating the third party.
Yeah, it's at its core, it's eliminated the third party, and we're still finding use cases. So this use case that Provide, where I work, is implementing is kind of I look at it as kind of a stepping stone, a foot in the door with enterprise companies, where then we will be able to implement other use cases that could help these companies, and then we have access to their scale, and that is where true crypto adoption will come from. I think it's a completely novel technology, and it's incredibly awesome, and I would not work on anything else. But fundamentally, we need adoption. We need people to actually use it, and right now there's a lot of barriers to that. And so, yes, I would say fundamentally, I aim for increasing adoption and actually making it fix things that are currently broken, not just implementing new interesting things, actually fixing things that are currently broken and providing value to people.
One of those barriers to adoption, besides just the learning curve of consumers and clients, is governments and the slow process of regulation.
Mhm.
Decentralizing the international economy comes with questions about regulation, and proponents of crypto tend to side with the benefits of a less regulated peer-to-peer network. But it begs the question of where criminal activity would fit into this picture. There's been problems with crypto being used for drug cartels, black market dealers, and to elude traffic regulation. Is this something you're worried about, whether it be at this scale or something smaller with tax evasion?
I would say in general, no. I mean, this is just the latest way by which it's done. I think, criminals will find a way to do what they want to do. Before crypto, they were all just using a bunch of cash, or, whatever else had some sort of value to it. So no, I would say in general, that's not a huge problem to me. I think it's all about just having effective regulation. Like really cracking down on some of the like really dumb cryptocurrency coins that come up like that are promoted by celebrities, and it's just immediately a pump and dump where they own a bunch of it. As soon as they announce it, a bunch of people buy it, the price spikes, then they dump it all, make a quick buck, right? I think that's kind of the stuff where consumers are really hurt. I also think that, as an industry as a whole, we're all working towards making it more secure and reliable. Like there's hacks every few months, if not every month. And these are like gigantic multi-$100 million hacks. And so I think, like minimizing that sort of stuff. And then finally, I would say that providing real effective regulation that doesn't limit innovation is probably the final point. Because regulation can be stifling, and there's some stuff around Coinbase right now that sometimes seems really scary. And then there's also the most recent example that comes to mind was the cracking down of Tornado Cash, which is a cryptocurrency mixer. So for those of you who don't know
what that is?
Yeah, for sure. So a mixer is essentially where it's just a pool of cryptocurrency, and then users are really just sending cryptocurrency to another location, but it goes through this pool, and then by going into the pool, it becomes totally opaque as to where the funds came from. So a mixer means you just mix a bunch of funds together and then shoot it out to the recipient, essentially totally obscuring where it came from. So you'd be like, oh, they're just money laundering. But there are actually a lot of other interesting use cases. And the issue with how Tornado Cash was cracked down on was they actually, number one, they removed the source code from GitHub, which is the common place where code is stored. They actually arrested one of the developers. This all goes against the ideals of like code is free speech. And it doesn't actually really do anything because you can actually, Ethereum cryptocurrency in general is decentralized, so you can't actually take it down. The original Tornado Cash smart contracts still exist on Ethereum and all the other cryptocurrencies that they were deployed on. So you can actually still use them. It doesn't actually really do anything. And then I think the final thing that this showed was that many stablecoins are actually centralized. So some stablecoins complied with these actions taken by OFAC and froze the stablecoins that were in the wallets of those who had interacted with the Tornado Cash smart contracts before. So
before you continue there, I'm actually glad you brought this up because many people see stablecoins as kind of a bridge from fiat currency into the crypto world. But there's also the other argument where you're tethering a decentralized network back to a central economy. Can you, before continuing on the path you were, just explain to the listeners what a stablecoin is?
Yeah, so I mean, a stablecoin is simply a cryptocurrency that is always pegged to the dollar, so it's always a one-to-one sort of thing, or theoretically it's always one-to-one. There's been some recent things that have changed that, but then I can go more into that. With stablecoins, I believe there are two main different types. There's algorithmic stablecoins and collaterally backed stablecoins. I'm by no means an expert on this sort of stuff, so I may be wrong, but yeah, I mean, each has its pros and cons. So to get back to the point that I was coming to earlier, collaterally backed stablecoins are much more centralized. So their stablecoins are actually, there's actually a whole bunch of cash or whatever sitting behind it. That means that you can say that this is worth $1. But to have that much cash requires like big entities, and so they're very centralized. So what happened with Tornado Cash was the people who had ever used the Tornado Cash smart contracts, all of their Circle USD and or Tether USD was just frozen. So like suddenly it was like the same thing as in the current financial system where there's a government order and then all your funds are suddenly frozen. And so that's kind of the argument that can be made for algorithmic stablecoins, even though one of them did just cause, like, I don't know, maybe the largest crash in history. I don't know, it was gigantic. And of course I'm talking about UST. So yeah, UST, that was a gigantic crash. Algorithmic stablecoins are generally based on game theory. So So there are ways that it can be totally skewed, but it's all about, probability. And unfortunately, the probability was exploited by someone who had a bunch of money. They destroyed the whole algorithm that kept UST pegged to the dollar, and then everything else crashed as well. That was kind of the beginning of, this sort of 2022 place that we found ourselves in with the state of crypto.
And that's kind of also, it's still a novel technology, as you talked about before, and there's issues that'll arise when you're transitioning in this. It's really a large transition to try to jump from straight fiat currency to a digital marketplace. And we talked a little bit about stable coins in the sense of as a bridge, but do you think it's going to be more nuanced in the way where, okay, now we know algorithmic stable coins, there's this larger risk at hand. Do you see those as a necessity moving forward, or is it just going to be collaterally backed stable coins?
No, I mean, I definitely see them as a necessity. Algorithmic stablecoins play into the whole ethos that many of us feel about cryptocurrency, which is like, no one can just turn it off. No one can control your stuff. It's the sense of ownership, and literal ownership, in that no one else can fuck with it. So yeah, I mean, I think algorithmic stablecoins are definitely a necessity moving forward. I think there's definitely going to be a place. There will be a balance between algorithmic stablecoins and collaterally backed stablecoins. Just like I don't believe that it will ever be all cryptocurrency and no one will be using US dollar anymore. But I think there's definitely still bugs to be worked out. But there's a lot of really smart people working in this industry, and people are trying to solve these problems, and I believe that progress is being made.
One reason crypto kind of gained popularity in 2021, moving into the front end of 2022, before we talked about the UST crash and everything that happened afterwards, was largely due to the weak US dollar. This was driven a lot by the government using fiscal stimulus to fight the COVID slowdown and adding a large amount of money supply to the economy. Ostensibly, this means that the checks people received at the end of 2020 and beginning of 2021 were created out of thin air, contributing to inflation that we now deal with today, and it's really grown rapid. Prior to the US leaving the gold standard in 1971, all US currency was backed by silver or gold, kind of how we talked about collaterally backed stablecoins. Now that it doesn't seem to need to be backed and the international monetary system relies on floating currencies, the Federal Reserve, although not advisedly, can print or kind of create dollars all they want. A lot of people believe that cryptocurrencies can't be manipulated in the same fashion, which proponents believe makes them superior to fiat currencies. In what way do you see this as true? And is it due to the caps on coin supply, or does it have to do with holding some kind of reserve?
I would say that it's neither of those things. I would say that, or no, it is simply the nature of a reserve, in a sense, because no one can. I mean, like there are really bad cryptocurrencies where people can manipulate them, but like with Bitcoin and Ethereum, no one can suddenly make more of it available. Okay, it's all based on these equations that are very public. You can't just suddenly make more of it. And then back to the concept of some coins having caps. There's also I can also add on to that where some coins are deflationary as well, where the total supply is actually decreasing constantly instead of simply having a cap.
How does that work?
So that's just like there will be like every time there's just like funds will be burned periodically, where essentially what that means is like the funds will be sent to an address on whatever cryptocurrency where they can no longer be accessed at all. So in a sense, they're just literally burned, like burning cash. Wow. And so I would say I think cryptocurrency is a hedge against inflation. I think you can look at countries like Argentina and Turkey where cryptocurrency use ballooned because the government fiat was becoming uncontrollable. And unfortunately, it is kind of starting to look like that here in the US. I mean, just on a day-to-day, like I suddenly noticed my chickens at Harris Teeter were so much more expensive than they've been for a while. And it's like, what is this? And so I definitely think that cryptocurrencies will play a huge part in resolving this issue that we have now in the global economy with floating point currencies.
The whole concept is obviously a large thing to comprehend, but something that's going to be important moving forward. So moving back into your work life, you truly have a unique experience and you've truly learned a lot over the past couple of years as you've demonstrated. You not only work in an emerging field, but you're doing so in a startup environment. What has that been like for you and how has it kind of influenced your outlook on work life in general?
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't work anywhere else. I'm very, very, very lucky to have found myself in the place that I am in. Personally, I look at it like I want to be making the steps now that lead to my final career goals, and I definitely have ambitions to start my own company and become a successful founder. And so to that end, I would say that I can't think of anything else that would be a better stepping point than working at a startup myself. I really feel like startups are an ideal environment when you want to work really hard on really hard problems with smart people. And I definitely feel like that's exactly the case where I'm working at Provide. Yeah, it's really just, trying to set myself up. And then there's just a lot of other benefits that come from being a remote, which I'm lucky to say that I am. There's another level of flexibility to it all. So it's like, while yeah, I am technically on call almost all the time, I don't really take traditional vacations. I can travel anytime I want. So pros and cons, but I wouldn't choose anything else at all.
And startups are often described as a lot of work for less money than you can make at a larger company. However, in the end, a lot of times you can kind of lead to a greater payout if the company's successful. Is this risk reward situation something that drives you?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there is the reward to it. And if there is if there is a successful startup that will be, I think it is the one that I am currently in. But even that being said, now is the time for me to take risks. Like I'm pretty young. It's pretty nice to be a software developer. You can work like literally anywhere. And so, worst case, it fails, I can just go somewhere else. But it isn't. I don't think it is. Certainly doesn't look like it is. And yeah, I mean, it's just like things are just getting better and better. I do think it's going to pay out, and it's like the startup lottery. There's a term, the startup lottery. Like, suddenly you just sink it whenever that first like money round is secured, and then boom. And that's what I like. I like to do, like all in type stuff.
And so that's obviously one of the benefits to it. And the other end you kind of spoke to, which was being able to work remotely. I actually spoke with Gordon Jilks about a month ago. He's the CEO of a dance education company, as well as the president of a multifaceted holding and investment company that specializes in tech, media, and education, actually works a lot in Web 3.0. I questioned Gordon about the pros and cons of remote work, and he believes it opened the doors for opportunities such as remote classes, even ones that his company offers for dance classes, and communication with other branches of his company through Zoom. But on the other hand, he also spoke about the sense of community and collaboration that kind of took a hit along the way with the collapse of in-person work. As someone that works fully remotely, how has this experience been for you? And can you speak a little bit to both ends of it?
Yeah, sure. So on the remote end of things, I mean, I absolutely love it. If it had to be all either remote, if it had to be all remote or all on site, then I would definitely choose all remote. It's really just the freedom of like waking up when I want to wake up and then going to gym when I want to go to the gym. Like it's really just it allows for an ideal schedule, and so I've taken a lot of pleasure in being able to kind of construct the perfect schedule for myself since I started at Provide. But I also feel I do feel the stuff that you said about the sense of community and being a team being felt more strongly when you're on site, like working in an
Yeah.
office. And I think there's a solution for that with remote teams, with having offsites where you'll just like take a week every few months, for instance, and like go hang out for some sort of time period with the rest of your team so that you can actually interact person to person. And so I am currently, trying to get that implemented here at Provide. See how that goes. But then the other point that I make about the pros of working on site are it's a very clear division between, like I'm working versus I'm not. And I do feel this to some extent because I just totally work at home, because like if I'm working but then I want to go relax or work on something that isn't technically work on just a side project or learn whatever I feel like learning, I do still continue to feel the pull of work all the time. There's good things to that, but there's also bad things. Sometimes it can be hard to relax. It's always, it's as I said, it's just always full of like, you can get this done right now because there's always stuff that could be finished. So it's like, it's a balance.
And so you seem to kind of learn what's important to you in your workplace and kind of find those key few things. I'm gonna just list off a few things people look for when they're finding a job and just see which one resonates with you the most or what you believe is the most important factor.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people look for company reputation, personal fulfillment, whether it be contributing to something positive or just something they've always wanted to do, enjoyable coworkers, salary, and hours. What has you learned?
I don't know if it exactly matches to any of the terms that you just said, but the only thing really that I'm concerned about right now is as I said, like setting myself up for what I want to do further down in my career. Like, what steps do I have to take right now to be able to take the gigantic steps that I want to take in the future? So yeah, just setting myself up in the environment that I think is most conducive to that is 100% my top priority right now. Yeah, like the other things just come on the side. They're nice. And if they were so bad, then they would then be the most important thing. But I'm lucky to say that they are not. And so I can really just focus on, making my environment as beneficial and ideal as possible.
And you're kind of finding that at a pretty young age. I mean, you're only 20 years old and you're already fully invested in the workforce. As we said at the beginning, you didn't go to college, and this is becoming a greater trend amongst young people entering the computer science field. And there's a debate emerging about whether or not college is necessary for a field such as yours. What is your position on that matter?
I do think that still, unfortunately, college is necessary for most industries. It doesn't need to be that way at all. Like computer science is one of the ones that where it's finally becoming like common to not have an engineering degree. But it's just like there's no like doctor boot camp for like being a medical person. But I think that is definitely like that could be the case, and I think that we'll probably see a transition to that probably in sort of a longer time frame, maybe like 20 to 50 years. Like college is very much a part of our society, and it's going to be hard for it to let go. Even though I do think that it should. I think that
especially economically, how much money they make.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how expensive it is these days. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think we'll see. No, currently it is almost impossible to not go to college, but I think that we will see a transition away from that.
So you said that maybe for fields such as computer science, it's applicable to not have to, but for other fields, that's a little bit harder. Nonetheless, do you think it's beneficial for people that are majoring in something in the liberal arts or just whatever their major may be, it's not computer science, to learn code? And even if they don't believe they'll be a full stack engineer?
That's an interesting question. Should most people learn how to code? I mean, it depends. Like, you don't really learn how to do anything unless you have some application of it that interests you. And personally, I believe like there's so many applications of learning how to program that it can interest anyone. But like, I would say, I think it's unlikely that everyone would be willing to learn it. I mean, I think everyone should definitely be introduced to it. I think like an intro to computer science class would, like where some just learn like basic Python type of stuff, would be a good thing, a good staple to add to, I don't know, maybe middle school, but probably high school curriculums. I think it would be really important to enforce like the possibility of it, but I don't think that everyone can really get into coding. I mean, it requires a certain type of brain. Like, you really have to just sit down and grind.
Yeah.
Like, like I get a lot of fulfillment out of it, but most days I don't really talk to anybody face to face. I'm just on the Zoom with my coworkers. And that can be tough, like a lot of people just aren't built like that.
So, despite this realization that college wasn't a necessity for your career aspirations, did you feel any external or even internal pressures to go to college, maybe from parents or anyone close to you, or even yourself?
Yeah, I did initially, like at the end of high school, I did not know what I wanted to do at all. I've always just kind of had this vague notion that I wanted to be an engineer of some sort, mostly because my dad was. But I didn't know specifically what that meant at all. So because I did initially try to go to NC State, which is the school right next to me. But luckily I didn't get in. And I was also lucky enough to have heard about the possibility of a boot camp and that actually working out from a friend that my dad knew. And so once I was set on the path of doing that, I really did not feel insecure about it at all. Because I already had this example, like we learn best through concrete examples. And I just had this example of some dude who had gone to college for like finance or something. He had difficulty getting a job. He went to a boot camp, same as the one that I ended up going to, and then immediately got like a nice job. So I was
Yeah.
just like, I can do that. And I was then, just lucky enough to take to it. So
And it definitely takes a certain type of personality and persistence,
mhm.
like you said before. And you kind of had to navigate that journey on your own, without much external guidance. What did that teach you about yourself? And can you kind of speak to the benefit of learning as you go?
Yeah, for sure. Navigating it myself. Well, I mean, so the boot camp that I was in had a lot of really good instructors. So one of those instructors was the person who initially showed me about what cryptocurrency was. Like I'd always heard of Bitcoin, but I did not take a second thought to whatever it was. But he introduced me to that. So I really think it's just like in terms of teaching myself and navigating it myself, it's just like making an effort to find the people who can tell you what you need to know. Because there's ways to find what you need to know. There's ways to find people. The internet is incredible. Um, and so that part is pretty self-explanatory. I think the most difficult thing is like finding what you want is the hardest thing for sure.
Yeah.
And then, going back to the idea about college, I think college is probably pretty good for that. Like you just get 4 years to explore random things. Because it's really hard to find a passion. But I think, to answer your question, once you find the passion, it becomes pretty easy because then you have the curiosity and focused directional goal of what you want to do, and then how to find the people who will tell you how to do that.
And that's definitely one of the things I truly admire about you is that you were able to find an industry that you're truly passionate about, and you won't accept being locked into a job that you hate or can't be there. Many people our age, whether in college, high school, or trying to carve out their own career path like you have, are searching for that exact thing. What am I passionate about, and how can I apply my skills? What is your advice to those people, including myself?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, it's really that's the trick. That's the trick of it. Like, how do you find your passion? Because a lot of people don't, but I couldn't imagine living my life without it. I think, yeah, you just have to like really try to explore things that you may be curious about. Like curiosity is the biggest thing. The thing about my passion for computer science is just how damn curious I am about every part of it, especially with crypto. And so I think when you find that general thing there where you be like, what is that? And then you make the effort to look into it, even if it's like difficult, and then you continue to press because your curiosity continues to drive you. I think that's how to do it. Like let your curiosity drive you into what you want to do, and kind of minimize distractions. Like I try to minimize as many distractions as I can. Like I don't spend any time on social media, um, and all that. Like I feel like that could be really detrimental to finding out what you want to do because it's just distracting.
Yeah.
Like it's pointless curiosity. It's not real.
And there's also certain things that might be able to help, whether it be exercise.
Hmm.
I know you're very involved, and things that just kind of center you to be able to bring you back down to earth.
Yeah.
Especially in such a fast-paced environment, a startup environment, crypto, all of
Hmm.
it kind of being thrown your way. How do you manage to really stay on that path and stay
Yeah.
kind of centered?
Yeah, so that just all comes down to my schedule. So I've been crafting my schedule ever since I had freedom and moved out of my parents' house. Yeah, it's just like I have to work out 6 days a week. Running's a big part of that. Eating well is a huge part of that. Very strict sleep schedule. It's just like it's the things that you know that you should do to stay healthy
Yeah.
and on top of things. Like we all know what that means. You just have to do it. And and the biggest thing to that is building the habit of doing it. And it's a lot of schedules that don't allow building those sorts of habits. Like, I got a lot of friends in college like yourself. Like it's hard to be consistent around the sorts of class schedules that you have. Like it's if you want to eat at
Yeah.
a certain time and go to the gym at a certain time, like you can't because they're all wild and all that. But that is the answer to really building the grind, because it requires totally consistent effort to build to the sorts of results that you want to see. Like we're not going to accomplish anything in a week. You got to build towards it for months and months and years really
Yeah.
to get to where you want to be.
And that planning kind of helps you plan for the unplanned, where if you
Yeah.
have these certain things locked
Mhm.
down in your life, those can't go wild. So things
Yeah.
are thrown at you from other directions. You have the capacity to handle it.
Mhm.
Overall, I think you're kind of a prime example of that. And I just want to thank you for your time because it's been very insightful. So
Yeah, dude.
thanks.
Great talking to you.
All right. This has been episode 5. Thank you guys all for listening and talk to you next week.